Time seemed to stand still on the windswept plains of Sage Valley, Wyoming, as Frank Harrison sat motionless in his wheelchair at the edge of his property. His weathered hands rested quietly on the armrests as his gaze stretched across the endless horizon. What happened next would leave the entire town of Cedar Creek in disbelief. A magnificent wild Mustang, coat gleaming like polished copper in the morning sun, emerged from the misty distance. The horse's approach was cautious yet deliberate, each step bringing it closer to the elderly man who hadn't ridden in over 15 years. Nobody could have predicted the extraordinary chain of events that would unfold from this mysterious encounter. Frank Harrison had been a legend in these parts, known throughout Wyoming for his exceptional horsemanship and the prestigious rodeo championships that lined the walls of his modest ranch house. The old-timers at the Dusty Spurs diner still spoke of his remarkable ability to gentle even the most spirited horses. But that was before the accident at the Blue Pine Ranch, before his legs betrayed him and confined him to a wheelchair. Now at 76, his connection to horses was limited to watching them through his binoculars from the safety of his wraparound porch. Life had settled into a predictable rhythm at the ranch. His granddaughter Casey, studying to become a veterinarian, would visit between her classes at the university, bringing supplies and checking on his well-being. The rest of his days were spent in solitude, his thoughts often drifting to the memories of galloping across these same plains, the wind in his face, and the feeling of complete freedom that only a horseman could understand. The morning that changed everything started like any other. Frank had wheeled himself onto the porch, coffee mug in hand, ready to watch the sunrise paint the sky in brilliant shades of orange and purple. The sound came first, the soft thud of hooves against the earth, different from the usual distant drumming of the wild herds. When Frank turned his head, his breath caught in his throat. There, not 50 yards from his porch, stood a Mustang, unlike any he'd seen in his decades of ranching. The horse's coat shimmered with hints of gold and copper, its mane catching the early morning light like strands of fire. But it was the animal's eyes that held Frank transfixed, intelligent, curious, and somehow knowing. Frank remained perfectly still, his heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and disbelief. Wild Mustangs never approached humans, especially not one on their own. "Well, I'll be damned," Frank whispered, his voice barely audible above the gentle prairie wind. The Mustang's ears flicked forward at the sound, head raising slightly, but it didn't bolt. Instead, it took another step closer, nostrils flaring as it tested the air between them. When Casey arrived later that day, Frank could hardly contain his excitement as he recounted the morning's events. His granddaughter listened with the patient smile she usually reserved for his old rodeo stories. "Are you sure you weren't dreaming, Grandpa?" she asked gently, arranging his medications. On the kitchen counter, wild Mustangs don't just walk up to people. But Frank knew what he'd seen. More than that, he felt something he hadn't experienced since before his accident, a spark of purpose, a connection to the world he'd left behind. That night, he could hardly sleep, his mind filled with images of the copper-colored Mustang and the inexplicable way it had looked at him. The next morning, Frank was outside before dawn, his wheelchair positioned in the exact spot where he'd seen the Mustang. Hours passed, and doubt began to creep in. Perhaps Casey was right. Perhaps it had been nothing more than an old man's wishful thinking. Then he heard it, the unmistakable sound of hooves approaching. The Mustang appeared through the morning mist, its movements more confident than the day before. This time, it came even closer, close enough for Frank to see the small white star on its forehead, partially hidden beneath a forelock the color of sunset. Frank's hands trembled as he gripped his wheelchair, decades of horsemanship warring with the instinct to remain still. "Hello there, partner," he said softly, using the same gentle tone that had earned him his reputation as a horse whisperer in his younger days. The Mustang's response was subtle, a slight lowering of its head, a softening around the eyes, but to Frank, it spoke volumes. Over the next few days, the Mustang's visits became more frequent, each one lasting a little longer than the last. Frank began calling him Phoenix, inspired by the way the horse's coat seemed to catch fire in the morning light. He set out fresh water in an old trough and scattered hay near the porch, careful to maintain a respectful distance that allowed Phoenix to choose whether to accept the offerings. Word of Frank's unusual visitor spread quickly through Cedar Creek. Some folks, remembering the Frank Harrison of old, drove out to Blue Pine Ranch hoping to catch a glimpse of the mysterious Mustang. Others, like Mike Daniels, the owner of the largest cattle operation in the county, saw the situation differently. "That Mustang's going to bring trouble, Frank," Mike warned one afternoon, his truck kicking up dust as he pulled into the driveway. "They're getting bold, coming this close to the ranches. The BLM's already talking about another roundup." The word sent a chill through Frank's body. He knew all too well what happened to wild Mustangs caught in government roundups. Crowded, holding pens, uncertain futures, and the loss of the very freedom that made them magnificent. The thought of Phoenix facing such a fate made his chest tighten with anxiety. As if sensing Frank's distress, Phoenix began appearing earlier each morning, staying longer into the day. Their bond grew stronger with each visit, built on a foundation of mutual trust and understanding. Frank found himself talking to the horse, sharing stories of his rodeo days and the dreams he'd had to abandon. Phoenix would listen, his ears forward, occasionally nickering softly as if in response. Casey noticed the change in her grandfather. The spark had returned to his eyes, and he spoke with an animation she hadn't seen since before his accident. Even Dr. Olivia Chen, who stopped by regularly to check on Frank's health, remarked on the positive change in his demeanor. But their peaceful routine was shattered one stormy evening when Mike Daniels arrived with troubling news. "The BLM's scheduled a roundup for next week," he announced, his expression grim. "They're targeting the herds in this area. Your Mustang's at risk, Frank." That night, as thunder rolled across the plains, Frank sat by his window, watching lightning illuminate the darkness. Phoenix was out there somewhere, perhaps seeking shelter from the storm. The thought of the proud Mustang being chased by helicopters, forced into holding pens, and stripped of his freedom was unbearable. The solution came from an unexpected source. During her next visit, Casey mentioned a wildlife sanctuary she'd learned about through her veterinary studies. "Prairie Wind Sanctuary," she explained, pulling up photos on her phone. "They have hundreds of acres of protected land. The Mustangs there are free to roam, but they're safe from roundups." Frank studied the images of rolling hills and open meadows, so similar to Phoenix's current home. It wasn't perfect, nothing could match the absolute freedom of the wild, but it was better than the alternative. The challenge would be convincing a wild Mustang to trust them enough for transport. Over the next few days, Frank and Casey worked together, gradually introducing Phoenix to the horse trailer they'd borrowed from Dr. Chen. They moved slowly, respecting the Mustang's natural caution while using Frank's intuitive understanding of horse behavior to guide their efforts. The day of the move arrived too quickly. Frank positioned himself near the trailer, his heart heavy with the weight of what they were about to do. Phoenix approached cautiously, drawn by Frank's familiar presence. Hours passed as they waited patiently, allowing the Mustang to investigate the trailer at his own pace. Finally, with gentle encouragement and unwavering trust in Frank, Phoenix stepped into the trailer. The sound of the door latching seemed to echo across the plains. Frank felt tears rolling down his weathered cheeks as he watched the trailer pull away, carrying Phoenix toward his new home. The following weeks were difficult. Frank found himself automatically looking for Phoenix each morning, his porch feeling emptier than ever before. But updates from the sanctuary brought comfort. Phoenix was adapting well, running free with other Mustangs across the protected grasslands. A month after Phoenix's relocation, Casey drove Frank to Prairie Wind Sanctuary. As they approached the fence line, Frank's heart raced with anticipation. Would Phoenix remember him? Would he understand why Frank had made this choice? His doubts vanished the moment he saw the familiar copper coat gleaming in the sunlight. Phoenix stood among a small group of Mustangs, his head held high, his presence as commanding as ever. Frank called out softly, and the Mustang's response was immediate. He trotted to the fence, nickering a greeting that brought fresh tears to Frank's eyes. The sanctuary staff watched in amazement as Phoenix gently nuzzled Frank's outstretched hand, their connection as strong as ever. "Some bonds can't be broken," Dr. Chen observed, having accompanied them to check on Phoenix's adjustment. "They just transform into something new." Frank's story began spreading beyond Cedar Creek, touching hearts across the state. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Local schools started bringing students to the sanctuary, using Frank and Phoenix's story to teach about wildlife conservation and the importance of protecting America's wild Mustangs. Today, Frank still visits Phoenix regularly, watching with pride as his friend runs free across the sanctuary's vast expanse. Their story has inspired changes in local attitudes toward wild Mustangs, with more ranchers supporting conservation efforts and seeking alternatives to roundups. For Frank, the greatest gift wasn't just saving Phoenix, it was rediscovering his own purpose. Through his connection with one extraordinary Mustang, he found a new way to share his lifelong love of horses with future generations. If this story touched your heart, remember that every day brings opportunities for unexpected connections and acts of compassion. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and share this story with someone who needs a reminder that age and circumstances don't limit our ability to make a difference in the world. As Frank often says, watching Phoenix run with his new herd, sometimes the wildest thing you can do is trust, and the bravest thing you can do is let go. His story continues to inspire others to look beyond limitations and find the courage to protect what they love. The autumn winds swept across Prairie Wind Sanctuary, carrying the rich scent of sage and wild grass. Frank Harrison sat in his wheelchair near the observation point, watching Phoenix lead his new herd across the golden meadows. The Mustang's copper coat had taken on a deeper, richer hue with the changing seasons, and his confident stride spoke of an animal that had found his place in the world. Yet there was more to this story than just the rescue of one remarkable horse. The sanctuary's director, Maria Delgado, had noticed something extraordinary about Phoenix's behavior. Unlike other rescued Mustangs, who typically kept to themselves, Phoenix seemed to possess an uncanny ability to connect with newly arrived horses, especially those struggling to adjust to their new environment. It reminded her of the way he had first approached Frank, as if he could sense something in troubled souls that others missed. One particular incident stood out. A recently rescued mare, severely traumatized from a failed roundup attempt, had refused to leave the corner of her enclosure for days. The sanctuary staff had tried everything to coax her out, but she remained withdrawn and defensive. Then, during one of Frank's visits, Phoenix broke away from his herd and approached the mare's enclosure. What happened next left everyone speechless. Phoenix stood quietly at the fence, his presence somehow both commanding and gentle. The mare's ears flicked forward, and for the first time since her arrival, she lifted her head with interest. Over the next hour, Phoenix remained there, occasionally nickering softly. By sunset, the mare had moved away from her corner, mirroring Phoenix's calm demeanor. Dr. Chen, who had continued to monitor Phoenix's progress at the sanctuary, was fascinated by this development. "It's as if he's become a bridge," she explained to Frank during one of his visits. "He understands both worlds, the wild and the domestic, and he's helping others navigate that transition. The discovery led to an innovative program at the sanctuary. Frank began visiting more frequently, working with Maria and Dr. Chen to develop what they called the Phoenix Protocol, a new approach to helping traumatized Mustangs adjust to sanctuary life. The program paired newly arrived horses with more adjusted ones like Phoenix, allowing them to learn from each other while maintaining their natural herd dynamics. Casey, now in her final year of veterinary school, incorporated these observations into her thesis research. She spent countless hours documenting the interactions between Phoenix and other horses, noting how his presence seemed to accelerate their rehabilitation process. Her work was drawing attention from wildlife behaviorists across the country, but life at Blue Pine Ranch hadn't stood still during these developments. The empty space where Phoenix used to visit had been transformed into something unexpected. Local children, having heard about Frank's story, began asking their parents to drive them out to the ranch. They wanted to hear first-hand accounts of his experiences with Phoenix and learn about wild Mustangs. At first, Frank was hesitant about these visits. He'd grown accustomed to his solitude, and the attention made him uncomfortable. But something about the children's genuine curiosity and open hearts reminded him of his own childhood fascination with horses. Gradually, he began looking forward to their questions and eager faces. One such visitor was Tommy Martinez, a 10-year-old boy who had recently lost the use of his legs in an accident. His parents brought him to meet Frank after hearing about the connection between the former rodeo champion and the wild Mustang. The boy's eyes were filled with the same despair Frank had known all too well. During Tommy's first visit, Frank wheeled himself onto the porch and patted the space beside him. "Let me tell you about freedom," he began, his voice carrying the weight of hard-won wisdom. "It's not about how far your legs can carry you. It's about how far your spirit can soar." As he shared the story of Phoenix, Tommy's expression began to change, hope replacing despair. The visits became regular, and soon Frank found himself hosting informal educational sessions on his porch. He shared not just Phoenix's story, but also his vast knowledge of horsemanship, ranch life, and the importance of preserving wild spaces. Casey helped him set up a small display of photos and artifacts from his rodeo days, creating a mini museum that celebrated both the history of the American West and the ongoing story of wildlife conservation. Mike Daniels, who had once warned Frank about the dangers of befriending a wild Mustang, became an unexpected ally in these educational efforts. Seeing the positive impact on the community, he began advocating for more sustainable approaches to managing the wild horse population. His influence helped establish a cooperative program between local ranchers and the sanctuary, creating protected corridors for wild herds to move safely between grazing areas. The transformation of Blue Pine Ranch into an educational center brought new energy to Frank's life. He found himself expanding his knowledge, reading everything he could find about wild horse behavior and conservation efforts. The walls of his home, once covered only with rodeo memorabilia, now displayed children's artwork depicting Phoenix and other Mustangs. During this time, Phoenix's own story continued to evolve at the sanctuary. Maria noticed that he had developed a particular interest in working with younger horses. Whether they were born at the sanctuary or recently rescued, Phoenix seemed to take them under his wing, teaching them essential social skills and helping them integrate into the herd. Dr. Chen began documenting this behavior, collaborating with Casey on a study of mentorship patterns in mixed herds of domestic and wild horses. Their research suggested that horses like Phoenix, who had successfully bridged the gap between wild and sanctuary life, could play a crucial role in preserving the natural behaviors and social structures that made wild Mustangs unique. As word of the Phoenix Protocol spread, other sanctuaries began sending representatives to learn from their experience. Frank found himself sharing his insights with visitors from across the country, each eager to understand how one wild Mustang had inspired such innovative approaches to horse rehabilitation. The sanctuary itself was growing, thanks in part to the attention Phoenix's story had brought to their work. New enclosures were built, allowing for more natural herd formations and providing additional space for rehabilitating horses. Frank worked closely with the design team, offering suggestions based on his years of experience and his unique perspective on what horses needed to thrive. One morning, as Frank watched Phoenix leading his herd across a new section of the sanctuary, he noticed something remarkable. The Mustang's movement patterns closely resembled the way he had first approached Frank's porch, cautious yet purposeful, aware yet unafraid. It was as if Phoenix was teaching his herd the same lesson he had taught Frank, that trust and freedom weren't opposing forces, but different aspects of the same fundamental truth. The children who visited Blue Pine Ranch were particularly fascinated by this aspect of Phoenix's story. They would sit spellbound as Frank described how the Mustang had chosen to approach him that first morning, defying all expectations about how wild horses should behave. Through these conversations, Frank helped them understand that true freedom wasn't about the absence of connections, but about the courage to form them on one's own terms. As the seasons turned, Frank's relationship with Phoenix continued to deepen, though in ways he hadn't expected. Their interactions were less frequent now, limited to his visits to the sanctuary, but each encounter felt more meaningful. Phoenix would always acknowledge Frank's presence, sometimes breaking away from his herd to stand near the fence where Frank sat in his wheelchair. Their quiet moments together, a reminder of the extraordinary journey they had shared. The sanctuary began hosting monthly events where families could learn about wild horse conservation and witness the results of the Phoenix Protocol firsthand. During these gatherings, Frank would share updated stories about Phoenix and the other horses, while Casey and Dr. Chen explained the scientific aspects of their work. These events became community celebrations, bringing together people from all walks of life who shared a common interest in preserving America's wild Mustangs. Tommy Martinez, the young boy who had first visited Frank in despair, became a regular presence at these events. His parents noticed a remarkable change in him. The more he learned about Phoenix and the other Mustangs, the more his confidence grew. He began taking photography classes, determined to document the horses' stories through his own unique perspective. Frank watched with pride as Tommy's first photo exhibition opened in the Cedar Creek Community Center. The images captured not just the physical beauty of the Mustangs, but also the spirit of freedom and resilience that Phoenix had first embodied. Looking at the photos, Frank recognized the same fire that had drawn him to horses as a young man, now burning bright in a new generation. The impact of Phoenix's story rippled out in unexpected ways. Local schools began incorporating visits to Blue Pine Ranch and the sanctuary into their curriculum, using the Phoenix Protocol as a framework for teaching about ecology, animal behavior, and the importance of conservation. Frank found himself working with teachers to develop age-appropriate materials that would help students understand the complex relationships between humans, animals, and the environment. As Blue Pine Ranch's educational programs grew, Frank noticed that the children who visited often brought their own stories of overcoming challenges. Some, like Tommy, dealt with physical limitations, while those faced different obstacles, but all seemed to find hope and inspiration in the story of a wild Mustang who had chosen to trust, and a man who had learned to see freedom in new ways. One particularly memorable moment came during a spring morning at the sanctuary. A group of students from a nearby special education program had come to learn about the horses. As Frank shared Phoenix's story, a young girl who hadn't spoken in months suddenly raised her hand. To everyone's amazement, she asked a question about how Phoenix communicated with the other horses. Her teachers later explained that something about the story of non-verbal connection between man and horse had resonated deeply with her. These experiences reinforced Frank's belief that his journey with Phoenix had been about more than just saving one wild Mustang. It had become a testament to the power of connection, proving that sometimes the most profound freedom comes not from standing alone, but from choosing to stand together. The transformation of both Blue Pine Ranch and Prairie Wind Sanctuary continued to evolve, each location serving as a unique chapter in an ongoing story of hope and renewal. Frank's porch, once a place of solitude and longing, had become a gathering space where new generations learned about the spirit of the American West and the importance of preserving its wild heritage. As the sun set over the sanctuary's rolling hills, Frank often found himself reflecting on the mysterious ways life had of coming full circle. The accident that had seemed to end his connection with horses had ultimately led him to a deeper understanding of what it meant to be free. Phoenix, in choosing to approach a man in a wheelchair, had not only saved himself, but had helped create a legacy that would continue to inspire others long into the future. Each day brought new stories of healing and hope, as both humans and horses found their way to freedom through unexpected connections. Frank's journey with Phoenix had become more than just a tale of friendship between man and horse. It had grown into a living testament to the enduring power of trust, courage, and the wild spirit that lives within us all. The evening light. It painted the sanctuary in shades of gold and purple, much like that first morning when Phoenix had appeared at Blue Pine Ranch. Frank watched as his friend led his herd toward the setting sun, their silhouettes merging with the landscape in a picture of perfect harmony. In that moment, he understood that some stories never truly end. They simply continue to unfold, touching lives in ways we never could have imagined. Winter descended upon Prairie Wind Sanctuary with a quiet grace, blanketing the rolling hills in pristine white. Frank Harrison watched from the heated observation room as Phoenix led his herd through the snowy landscape, their breath forming delicate clouds in the crisp morning air. The copper stallion had grown stronger over the past months, his coat thickening against the Wyoming cold, but it was his unwavering spirit that continued to amaze everyone at the sanctuary. The season brought new challenges and opportunities to the sanctuary's innovative programs. Dr. Chen had noticed that Phoenix displayed remarkable adaptability during the harsh weather, teaching newer arrivals how to find shelter in the sanctuary's natural formations and leading them to areas where grass remained accessible beneath the snow. This adaptive behavior became the focus of an expanded study, drawing researchers from universities across the country. Maria Delgado worked tirelessly to implement winter modifications to the Phoenix Protocol, incorporating these new observations into their rehabilitation program. The sanctuary's success had caught the attention of wildlife conservation organizations, leading to increased funding and support for their groundbreaking work with traumatized Mustangs. Back at Blue Pine Ranch, Frank's educational programs had taken an unexpected turn. The winter months, typically quiet in ranching communities, became a time of indoor learning and storytelling. The old barn, cleaned and renovated with help from local volunteers, was transformed into a winter classroom where children could learn about wild horse behavior and conservation while staying warm. Tommy Martinez, now a regular fixture at these gatherings, had started a photography club for other children interested in documenting the sanctuary's work. His own portfolio had grown impressive, capturing intimate moments of horse behavior that even experienced photographers found challenging to access. His unique perspective from his wheelchair offered angles and insights that others might have missed. One snowy afternoon, as Frank shared stories with a group of visitors in the barn, an unexpected guest arrived. Sarah Running Wolf, an elder, from the nearby Wind River Reservation, had heard about the Phoenix Protocol and came to offer her people's traditional knowledge about wild horses. Her presence added a new dimension to the program, weaving ancient wisdom with modern conservation practices. Sarah spoke of how her ancestors had lived alongside wild horses for generations, understanding them not as creatures to be tamed, but as equal inhabitants of the land. Her stories resonated deeply with Frank's own experiences with Phoenix, highlighting how some truths about freedom and respect transcended cultural boundaries. The collaboration between Frank and Sarah led to the development of a new educational component at both the ranch and the sanctuary. They began incorporating traditional Native American perspectives on horse behavior and land stewardship into their programs, creating a more holistic approach to conservation education. Casey, whose veterinary research had gained significant attention in academic circles, found herself increasingly drawn to these traditional practices. She began documenting how incorporating indigenous knowledge enhanced their understanding of wild horse behavior, particularly in terms of herd dynamics and natural healing processes. During one particularly harsh blizzard, the importance of this combined knowledge became clear. A group of newly rescued Mustangs, still adjusting to sanctuary life, seemed disoriented by the severe weather. Phoenix, displaying behavior that Sarah had described in her traditional stories, led the confused horses to a natural windbreak formed by a limestone outcropping. The incident became a powerful example of how instinctual wisdom could work alongside modern conservation methods. As winter deepened, Frank noticed something remarkable about the children who continued to visit despite the cold. They seemed to understand intuitively what had taken him years to learn, that physical limitations didn't define the scope of one's impact on the world. He watched as Tommy and his friends developed their own ways of connecting with the horses, proving that compassion and understanding could bridge any gap. The sanctuary's success began attracting attention from unexpected quarters. A documentary filmmaker, intrigued by the story of Phoenix and the innovative rehabilitation program, approached Maria about creating a feature-length film. The project would focus not just on Phoenix's journey, but on the larger story of how one wild Mustang had inspired a revolution in horse conservation. Frank initially hesitated about participating in the documentary, preferring to stay out of the spotlight. But when he saw how the film could help spread awareness about wild horse conservation and inspire others facing similar challenges, he agreed to share his story. The filming process brought new energy to both the sanctuary and Blue Pine Ranch, as the crew captured the daily interactions between horses and humans. The documentary team was particularly moved by the sight of Phoenix working with newly arrived Mustangs. They filmed several sessions where the Copper Stallion demonstrated his remarkable ability to calm traumatized horses, showing them through example how to adapt to their new environment while maintaining their wild spirit. During one memorable filming session, a young filly who had been particularly resistant to human presence showed dramatic improvement after spending time with Phoenix's herd. The cameras captured the moment she finally approached the fence, where Frank sat in his wheelchair, mirroring the trust that Phoenix had shown so many months ago. As winter began to ease its grip on the land, new developments emerged at the sanctuary. The success of the Phoenix Protocol had led to the creation of a training program for other sanctuaries hoping to implement similar methods. Frank found himself serving as a consultant, sharing his unique insights into the delicate balance between freedom and connection. The training program brought visitors from sanctuaries across the country, each eager to learn how to better serve their own rescued Mustangs. Frank worked closely with Maria and Dr. Chen to develop a comprehensive curriculum that incorporated both scientific research and practical experience. They emphasized the importance of patience, observation, and respect for the horse's wild nature. One particularly promising trainee was Lisa Blackwood, a former rodeo rider who had lost her leg in an accident. She connected immediately with Frank's story and showed a natural ability to understand the subtle communications between horses. Her presence at the sanctuary reinforced the message that physical disabilities didn't diminish one's ability to make a meaningful contribution to conservation efforts. The sanctuary's success stories continued to multiply. A particularly challenging case involved a stallion named Storm, who had been severely traumatized during a roundup attempt. Traditional rehabilitation methods had failed to reach him, but when introduced to Phoenix's herd, he began to show signs of improvement. The process of his recovery became a case study for the documentary, highlighting the effectiveness of the Phoenix Protocol. As spring approached, Frank and Sarah collaborated on a new initiative to document traditional horse medicine and behavioral knowledge. They worked with Casey to create a database that would preserve these practices for future generations, while validating their effectiveness through modern research methods. The project became a model for similar efforts across the country, showing how traditional wisdom could enhance contemporary conservation practices. The changing seasons brought new activities to Blue Pine Ranch's educational programs. The children who had spent winter months learning theory in the barn now had opportunities for hands-on experience with the sanctuary's more socialized horses. Under careful supervision, they learned about horse body language, herd dynamics, and the importance of respecting wild spaces. Tommy's photography club flourished with the arrival of spring. The young photographers captured the changing landscape and its effect on horse behavior, creating a visual record of the sanctuary's work. Their images were featured in a traveling exhibition that helped raise awareness about wild horse conservation, while showcasing the artistic talents of young people with diverse abilities. The documentary crew returned to capture the transition from winter to spring, focusing on how Phoenix's herd adapted to the changing conditions. They filmed touching scenes of the copper stallion leading young foals through spring meadows, teaching them essential survival skills while maintaining the wild grace that had first drawn Frank's attention. As the days lengthened, Frank found himself reflecting on the extraordinary journey that had begun with a single moment of connection between a wild Mustang and a man in a wheelchair. What had started as an unlikely friendship had grown into a movement, touching lives and changing perspectives far beyond the boundaries of Sage Valley. The sanctuary's success inspired other communities to reconsider their approach to wild horse management. Local ranchers, who had once viewed Mustangs as nuisances, began working with the sanctuary to develop sustainable solutions that would allow wild herds to coexist with cattle operations. Mike Daniels became a vocal advocate for these cooperative efforts, using his influence to promote more humane approaches to population control. Sarah's involvement had led to partnerships with other indigenous communities, creating a network of knowledge sharing that strengthened both traditional and modern conservation practices. The sanctuary began hosting cultural events that celebrated the deep historical connections between horses and native peoples while addressing contemporary conservation challenges. The impact of their work extended beyond horse conservation. The Phoenix Protocol's success in rehabilitating traumatized horses led to interest from human trauma specialists who saw parallels between the program's methods and therapeutic approaches for people dealing with PTSD and other anxiety disorders. The sanctuary began hosting workshops for healthcare professionals interested in understanding these connections. As spring fully embraced the landscape, Frank watched Phoenix lead his herd across newly green pastures. The copper stallion moved with the same confidence that had marked their first encounter, but now his strength served a greater purpose. He had become more than just a symbol of freedom. He was a teacher, a healer, and a bridge between worlds. The documentary crew captured these moments of transition, weaving together the many threads of their story: the personal journey of healing and discovery, the development of innovative conservation methods, and the growing movement to protect America's wild Mustangs. Through their lens, viewers would see how one unexpected connection had sparked a chain of events that continued to create positive change. Frank's role had evolved as well. While he remained the heart of the program, he had learned to share leadership with others who brought their own gifts and perspectives to the work. The educational programs at Blue Pine Ranch were now run by a diverse team of instructors, each contributing their unique expertise while maintaining the core values of respect, patience, and understanding that had characterized Frank's approach. From the beginning, as the sanctuary prepared for another season of growth and change, Frank found peace in knowing that the legacy of his connection with Phoenix would continue through the many lives they had touched. The story of a wild Mustang and an elderly man in a wheelchair had become something larger than either of them, a testament to the enduring power of trust, courage, and the unbreakable bonds that could form between humans and horses. Spring brought an unexpected visitor to Prairie Wind Sanctuary. Dr. James Morrison, a renowned equine behavioral specialist from the University of Colorado, arrived unannounced one morning. He had heard about the remarkable success of the Phoenix Protocol and wanted to witness it firsthand. The timing of his arrival coincided with a moment that left even the experienced researcher speechless. Phoenix stood at the center of a group of newly rescued Mustangs, his presence commanding yet gentle. A particularly skittish mare, recently saved from a failed roundup attempt, kept her distance from the others. Dr. Morrison watched in amazement as Phoenix approached her with calculated patience, his body language conveying a message that transcended human understanding. The Copper Stallion's methodology defied conventional wisdom about wild horse behavior. Instead of asserting dominance through aggressive displays, Phoenix demonstrated a nuanced approach to leadership that Dr. Morrison had never encountered in his decades of research. The mare gradually began mirroring Phoenix's calm demeanor, her tense muscles relaxing as she accepted his guidance. Frank observed the interaction from his usual spot near the observation area, sharing insights with Dr. Morrison about the subtle communications taking place between the horses. The researcher furiously took notes, occasionally shaking his head in wonder. "This challenges everything we thought we knew about rehabilitation of traumatized wild horses," he admitted, his excitement barely contained. The visit sparked a new chapter in the sanctuary's development. Dr. Morrison proposed a formal research partnership between the University of Colorado and Prairie Wind Sanctuary. The collaboration would allow for comprehensive documentation of Phoenix's unique approach to herd integration while providing resources to expand the sanctuary's rehabilitation program. Casey's veterinary expertise proved invaluable in establishing the research protocols. Her intimate knowledge of both traditional veterinary medicine and the innovative methods developed at the sanctuary helped bridge the gap between academic theory and practical application. She worked closely with Dr. Morrison to design studies that would capture the nuanced aspects of Phoenix's rehabilitation technique without disrupting the natural dynamics of the herd. The research partnership brought new energy to the sanctuary's programs. Graduate students began arriving from various universities, each bringing fresh perspectives to the study of wild horse behavior. Their presence created an atmosphere of scholarly excitement that complemented the sanctuary's existing spiritual and emotional dimensions. One particularly promising research project focused on the role of multi-generational herd dynamics in trauma recovery. Phoenix's herd had naturally organized itself into family groups, with older horses mentoring younger ones in ways that closely resembled wild behavior patterns. This natural mentorship system became a key component of what researchers were now calling the Phoenix paradigm. Sarah Running-Wolf's traditional knowledge found validation in the scientific observations. The behavioral patterns she had described from her people's oral histories aligned remarkably well with the data being collected by the research team. This convergence of ancient wisdom and modern science opened new avenues for understanding wild horse behavior. The documentary crew, still following the sanctuary's story, captured the excitement of these developments. Their cameras recorded the daily interactions between Phoenix's herd and the newly arrived horses, creating a visual record of the rehabilitation process that would prove invaluable for future research and training programs. Back at Blue Pine Ranch, Frank's educational programs evolved to incorporate the new scientific insights. The children who visited now learned about horse behavior through a combination of traditional stories, scientific observation, and hands-on experience. Tommy's photography club played an important role in documenting these educational sessions, creating a visual archive that would help future generations understand the importance of wild horse conservation. Lisa Blackwood's presence at the sanctuary continued to inspire visitors facing physical challenges. Her expertise in adaptive riding techniques, combined with her understanding of wild horse behavior, led to the development of new programs for people with disabilities. These programs focused not just on riding, but on developing meaningful connections with horses through observation and understanding. The sanctuary's success attracted attention from international conservation organizations. Representatives from wildlife preserves in Europe and South America visited to learn about the Phoenix Protocol, hoping to adapt its principles for their own horse conservation efforts. Each visit brought new perspectives and challenges, enriching the sanctuary's understanding of global conservation issues. Maria Delgado worked tirelessly to balance the increasing demands on the sanctuary's resources. The influx of researchers and visitors required careful management to ensure that the horses' well-being remained the primary focus. She implemented new guidelines that protected the natural behavior patterns of the herds while allowing for necessary research and documentation. Dr. Chen's role expanded to include coordination between the various research projects and the sanctuary's day-to-day operations. Her medical expertise proved crucial in monitoring the health impacts of different rehabilitation approaches, ensuring that the scientific pursuit of knowledge never compromised the horse's physical or emotional welfare. The sanctuary's work began gaining recognition in unexpected quarters. Mental health professionals noticed parallels between the Phoenix Protocol's approach to trauma recovery in horses and successful therapeutic techniques used with humans. A new collaboration emerged with a nearby veterans center, where former service members found healing through interactions with the sanctuary's horses. Frank found himself increasingly called upon to share his insights with diverse audiences. His unique perspective as both a former rodeo champion and a person with disabilities gave him credibility in multiple communities. He spoke at conferences, participated in online seminars, and consulted with other sanctuaries, always emphasizing the importance of respecting both the wild nature of the horses and their capacity for connection. The documentary project evolved into a series, each episode focusing on a different aspect of the sanctuary's work. The filmmakers captured the scientific research, the educational programs, the therapeutic applications, and the ongoing story of Phoenix's influence on wild horse conservation. Their work helped spread awareness of the sanctuary's innovative approaches while challenging common misconceptions about wild Mustangs. Throughout these developments, Phoenix remained the heart of the sanctuary's success. The Copper Stallion continued to demonstrate an extraordinary ability to connect with troubled horses, showing them through example how to navigate the space between wildness and domestic life. His methods became the foundation for what researchers were now calling adaptive rehabilitation, an approach that honored the horse's wild nature while helping them adjust to sanctuary life. As summer approached, the sanctuary prepared for a new challenge. A group of Mustangs rescued from a particularly traumatic roundup situation would be arriving, testing the limits of the Phoenix Protocol. These horses had experienced severe stress and would require especially careful handling. The entire team, from researchers to caretakers, prepared for what would be their most challenging rehabilitation effort yet. Dr. Morrison's team developed new monitoring protocols to track the progress of these traumatized horses. They would use a combination of behavioral observation, physiological measurements, and documentary footage to create a comprehensive record of the rehabilitation process. The data would help refine their understanding of how Phoenix's methods could be adapted for extreme cases. The arrival of the new Mustangs created a tense atmosphere at the sanctuary. These horses showed signs of deep psychological trauma, with some refusing to eat and others displaying extreme defensive behaviors. The research team watched anxiously as Phoenix was given access to their enclosure, wondering how he would approach such severely traumatized animals. What followed amazed even those who had grown accustomed to Phoenix's extraordinary abilities. The copper stallion seemed to instinctively understand the depth of these horses' trauma. He approached them with unprecedented patience, sometimes spending hours simply standing near their enclosure, allowing them to become accustomed to his presence before making any direct contact. Frank recognized in Phoenix's behavior the same gentle persistence the stallion had shown during their first encounters. He remembers what it's like to be afraid, Frank explained to Dr. Morrison. But he also remembers how to find courage through connection. The researcher nodded thoughtfully, adding another note to his already extensive observations. Over the following weeks, the new Mustangs began showing signs of improvement. Following Phoenix's example, they gradually began exploring their environment, interacting with other horses, and showing interest in human caregivers. The research team meticulously documented every step of their progress, building a valuable database of information about trauma recovery in wild horses. The success with these severely traumatized horses drew attention from animal behavioral specialists worldwide. The Phoenix Protocol was proving effective in cases that traditional rehabilitation methods had failed to reach. Requests for training and consultation poured in from organizations dealing with rescued wildlife of all kinds. As the sanctuary's reputation grew, so did the need for expanded facilities. A generous grant from a wildlife conservation foundation allowed for the construction of new rehabilitation areas specifically designed to support the Phoenix Protocol's methodology. The design incorporated natural features that helped horses feel secure while gradually introducing them to human presence. Local support for the sanctuary's work continued to grow. Ranchers who had once viewed wild Mustangs as nuisances began volunteering their time and resources to support the rehabilitation programs. Mike Daniels led by example, using his influence to promote cooperation between the ranching community and conservation efforts. The educational programs at Blue Pine Ranch expanded to include intensive workshops for professionals working with traumatized animals. Veterinarians, wildlife rehabilitators, and animal behaviorists came from around the country to learn about the Phoenix Protocol's innovative approaches. Each workshop combined classroom instruction with practical observation, allowing participants to witness Phoenix's methods firsthand. Tommy's Photography Club documented these developments with increasing sophistication. The young photographers learned to capture subtle interactions between horses, creating images that helped illustrate the principles of the Phoenix Protocol for training materials and research publications. Their work added an important visual dimension to the sanctuary's growing body of educational resources. As the summer progressed, the sanctuary's influence continued to expand in unexpected ways. The success of the Phoenix Protocol in rehabilitating traumatized horses led to adaptations of its principles for other species. Wildlife rehabilitation centers began reporting success with modified versions of the protocol in their work with various traumatized animals. The convergence of scientific research, traditional wisdom, and practical experience at Prairie Wind Sanctuary was creating a new model for wildlife rehabilitation. This holistic approach, which honored both the wild nature of the animals and their capacity for healing through connection, was revolutionizing the field of wildlife conservation. Through it all, Frank remained grounded in the simple truth that had started this journey. The profound healing that could occur when beings recognized and respected each other's essential nature. As he watched Phoenix guide another traumatized horse toward recovery, he knew that their story was far from over. It was, in fact, just beginning to reveal its full potential for changing how humans understood and protected the wild creatures who shared their world. The crisp morning air carried whispers of change across Prairie Wind Sanctuary as a unique experiment unfolded. A renowned animal psychologist, Dr. Rachel Martinez, had proposed testing Phoenix's remarkable abilities with a different kind of challenge. Rather than working with traumatized Mustangs, they would introduce him to a group of domesticated horses struggling to reconnect with their natural instincts. 5 thoroughbreds, retired from racing careers, stood nervously in the transition paddock. Years of intense training and controlled environments had suppressed their innate horse behaviors, leaving them dependent on human direction and unsure how to interact naturally with their own kind. Dr. Martinez believed that Phoenix's unique ability to bridge the wild and domestic worlds might help these horses rediscover their forgotten heritage. Frank watched from his observation point as Phoenix first encountered the thoroughbreds. The copper stallion's approach was unlike anything they had seen before. Instead of his usual careful distance, he moved with deliberate confidence, as if recognizing that these horses needed a different kind of guidance. His presence commanded attention, but not through dominance or force. The first breakthrough came with a mare named Eclipse, a former Kentucky Derby contender. She had spent her entire life in highly structured environments, every movement dictated by human handlers. As Phoenix demonstrated natural grazing patterns and herd movements, Eclipse began showing signs of remembering behaviors she had never been taught, but were encoded in her DNA. Dr. Chen monitored the horse's physical responses throughout the process, noting remarkable changes in their stress indicators. As the thoroughbreds began mimicking Phoenix's natural behaviors, their cortisol levels dropped and their heart rates stabilized. The transformation went beyond simple imitation. They were experiencing a profound awakening of their inherent horse nature. Casey's research took an unexpected turn as she documented this reverse rehabilitation process. The thoroughbred's journey from artificial constraints to natural expression provided new insights into how deeply ingrained wild instincts remained even after generations of selective breeding and controlled environments. Her findings challenged conventional wisdom about domestic horse psychology. The implications of this work reached beyond the sanctuary's gates. Training centers and racing stables began showing interest in incorporating elements of natural behavior into their programs. The success with the thoroughbreds suggested that maintaining connections to natural instincts could actually enhance horses' overall well-being and performance. Sarah Running Wolf saw profound significance in these developments. From her cultural perspective, the thoroughbreds' awakening represented a return to spiritual wholeness. She worked with Dr. Martinez to document how traditional understanding of horse spirits aligned with modern psychological observations of behavioral restoration. The documentary team captured remarkable footage of the thoroughbred's transformation. Moments of realization were clearly visible as the horses discovered natural behaviors they had never been allowed to express. Their journey from rigid, programmed movements to fluid, instinctive responses became a powerful testament to the resilience of natural instincts. At Blue Pine Ranch, the educational programs expanded to include lessons about the importance of allowing domestic animals to express their natural behaviors. Children learned about the delicate balance between human needs and animal nature, understanding that true partnership meant respecting and nurturing innate instincts rather than suppressing them. Tommy's Photography Club found new inspiration in documenting the contrast between the thoroughbreds' initial mechanical movements and their gradually emerging natural grace. Their images captured the subtle changes in posture and expression as the horses rediscovered their heritage, telling a story of awakening that touched viewers deeply. Lisa Blackwood's adaptive riding program evolved to incorporate insights from the Thoroughbred Project. She developed methods that allowed riders to work with horses in ways that respected and encouraged natural behaviors, creating stronger bonds through mutual understanding rather than control. The Sanctuary's research partnership with the University of Colorado expanded to include studies of behavioral genetics. Scientists were fascinated by how quickly buried instincts could resurface when given the right environmental triggers. Phoenix's ability to activate these dormant behaviors became the subject of intense scientific interest. Maria Delgado faced new challenges in managing the integration of the Thoroughbred program with existing sanctuary operations. The presence of horses from such different backgrounds required careful consideration of space allocation and herd dynamics. Her skillful management ensured that all the horses' needs were met while maintaining the sanctuary's peaceful atmosphere. Mike Daniels, initially skeptical about the Thoroughbred Project, became one of its strongest advocates after witnessing the transformative results. His influence helped spread awareness among traditional horse people about the importance of honoring horses' natural instincts, even in professional training environments. As autumn approached, the thoroughbreds showed remarkable progress. Their movements had become more natural, their social interactions more authentic. Phoenix continued to guide them with unwavering patience, demonstrating the subtle nuances of horse communication and behavior that had been lost in their years of intensive training. The success of this experiment led to new understandings about horse rehabilitation. The sanctuary began receiving requests to help other domestic horses reconnect with their natural instincts. The Phoenix Protocol was adapted to address not just trauma recovery, but also the restoration of natural behaviors in horses from highly controlled backgrounds. Frank's observation skills proved invaluable in understanding the thoroughbred's transformation. His years of watching Phoenix work with wild Mustangs helped him identify key moments in the domestic horse's journey back to natural behavior. His insights helped shape new approaches to horse training that emphasized working with, rather than suppressing, natural instincts. The impact of this work extended into the broader equestrian world. Training centers began incorporating natural connection periods into their programs, allowing horses time to express natural behaviors and interact freely with herdmates. The benefits of this balanced approach became increasingly apparent in the horse's overall well-being and willingness to work with humans. Dr. Martinez's research revealed fascinating patterns in how buried instincts resurfaced. Some behaviors emerged quickly, while others required more time and exposure to proper models like Phoenix. These findings contributed to a growing understanding of how domestic animals maintained connections to their wild heritage, despite generations of selective breeding. The sanctuary's professional development programs expanded to include workshops for trainers and riding instructors interested in incorporating natural behavior principles into their work. These sessions helped bridge the gap between traditional horsemanship, and a more naturalistic approach to working with horses. As the Thoroughbred project continued to yield positive results, it sparked discussions about the broader implications for animal welfare. The success in helping highly trained horses reconnect with their natural instincts suggested new possibilities for enriching the lives of other domestic animals. Throughout these developments, Phoenix demonstrated a remarkable ability to adapt his teaching style to different situations. His work with the thoroughbreds showed a new dimension of his intelligence and sensitivity, further cementing his reputation as an extraordinary bridge between the wild and domestic worlds. The transformation of the thoroughbreds became another powerful chapter in the sanctuary's ongoing story of healing and discovery. Their journey from artificial constraints to natural expression demonstrated that the path to wellness sometimes meant remembering who you were meant to be all along. Early autumn painted Prairie Wind Sanctuary in rich golden hues as an international delegation of wildlife experts gathered for an unprecedented event. The United Nations Environmental Conservation Committee had sent representatives to evaluate the sanctuary's groundbreaking work for potential implementation in global wildlife protection programs. Their presence marked a new chapter in the sanctuary's evolution from a local rehabilitation center to a model for worldwide conservation efforts. Ambassador Helena Rossi, the UN's Special Envoy for Wildlife Preservation, stood mesmerized as Phoenix demonstrated his extraordinary abilities with a newly arrived group of Mustangs. These horses, rescued from drought-stricken regions of Nevada, carried the trauma of near starvation and forced displacement. Yet under Phoenix's guidance, they were already showing remarkable signs of adaptation to their new environment. The Copper Stallion's influence had grown beyond individual rehabilitation cases. He had developed a sophisticated system of integrating new arrivals into the sanctuary's established herds, creating stable social structures that supported long-term recovery. The UN observers watched in amazement as Phoenix orchestrated complex interactions between different groups of horses, maintaining harmony while allowing each animal to find its place. Frank shared his observations with the delegation, pointing out subtle aspects of Phoenix's methodology that might have gone unnoticed. "Watch how he creates spaces of opportunity," Frank explained, indicating how Phoenix would position himself to allow nervous newcomers to approach on their own terms. He never forces an interaction, but he makes it possible for connections to form naturally. The UN's interest stemmed from emerging evidence that the Phoenix Protocol could be adapted for wildlife conservation efforts beyond equine rehabilitation. Early trials with displaced elephant herds in Africa and isolated wolf packs in Europe had shown promising results when conservationists applied modified versions of the protocol's core principles. A groundbreaking aspect of the sanctuary's work caught particular attention from the international observers: the integration of advanced technology with natural behavioral observation had created new possibilities for wildlife monitoring. Discrete sensors throughout the sanctuary collected data on herd movements, social interactions, and stress indicators without disrupting the horse's natural behaviors. Casey's research team had developed an artificial intelligence system that analyzed this data in real time, identifying patterns and predicting potential issues before they became problems. This predictive capability allowed the sanctuary staff to provide support when needed, while maintaining the hands-off approach that made the Phoenix Protocol so effective. The sanctuary's success inspired innovative approaches to conservation challenges worldwide. Representatives from the Amazon basin shared how they had adapted the protocol's principles to help jaguars displaced by deforestation, while Australian conservationists reported success with traumatized koalas rescued from bushfire zones. Each adaptation brought new insights into the universal aspects of trauma recovery in wildlife. Sarah Running Wolf's traditional knowledge continued to provide valuable perspectives that enrich the scientific understanding of animal behavior. Her insights into the spiritual connections between living beings resonated strongly with indigenous delegates from various nations, leading to new collaborations between traditional knowledge keepers and conservation scientists. The documentary series following the sanctuary's work had evolved into a global phenomenon, broadcast in over 40 countries. The latest episodes focused on the international impact of the Phoenix Protocol, showcasing how its principles were being adapted to address wildlife conservation challenges around the world. The series helped build public support for conservation efforts while highlighting the importance of innovative approaches to wildlife rehabilitation. At Blue Pine Ranch, the educational programs expanded to include virtual sessions with classrooms. Worldwide, students from Tokyo to Toronto could now interact with the sanctuary's staff and observe Phoenix's work through live streaming technology. These virtual connections helped spread awareness of wildlife conservation issues while inspiring young people to become involved in environmental protection. Tommy's Photography Club had grown into a full-fledged media center, training young people with disabilities to document wildlife conservation efforts. Their work gained international recognition when several major conservation organizations began featuring their images in global awareness campaigns. The unique perspectives captured by these young photographers helped change public perceptions about both wildlife and disability. Lisa Blackwood's adaptive riding program attracted attention from rehabilitation centers worldwide. Her methods of combining physical therapy with wildlife conservation awareness had shown remarkable results, leading to the development of similar programs in other countries. The success of these programs demonstrated how conservation efforts could provide therapeutic benefits for humans while supporting wildlife rehabilitation. The University of Colorado Research Partnership expanded to include collaborations with institutions from 5 continents. Dr. Morrison coordinated these international research efforts, ensuring that data collection and analysis methods remained consistent across different locations and species. The resulting database provided unprecedented insights into wildlife trauma recovery patterns. Maria Delgado's management model became a template for wildlife sanctuaries worldwide. Her balanced approach to combining research, rehabilitation, and public education, while prioritizing animal welfare, was particularly relevant for developing nations establishing their first conservation programs. She worked closely with the UN delegation to create guidelines for implementing similar programs. In diverse cultural and economic contexts, the sanctuary's influence reached into unexpected areas of scientific research. Neuroscientists studying empathy and emotional intelligence in animals found the Phoenix Protocol provided valuable insights into interspecies communication. Their findings suggested that the capacity for emotional healing through social connection was more universal than previously believed. Dr. Chen's medical oversight expanded to include collaboration with veterinary programs worldwide. She developed protocols for adapting the Phoenix Protocol to different species, while maintaining its core principles of respect for natural behaviors and recognition of individual animals' emotional needs. Her work helped bridge the gap between traditional veterinary medicine and innovative rehabilitation techniques. The sanctuary's professional training programs evolved to include intensive workshops for international conservation teams. Participants learned not only about wildlife rehabilitation techniques, but also about implementing sustainable conservation programs in their home regions. These workshops created a global network of conservation professionals sharing knowledge and resources. The UN delegation's visit coincided with a significant milestone in the sanctuary's development. a major wildlife conservation foundation had pledged substantial funding to establish similar sanctuaries on other continents. These new facilities would serve as regional centers for wildlife rehabilitation while contributing to the growing body of research on trauma recovery in various species. Throughout these developments, Phoenix maintained his remarkable ability to connect with troubled animals. His work with the drought-affected Mustangs demonstrated new aspects of his rehabilitation technique. He showed particular sensitivity to their specific trauma, adjusting his approach to address their fears around water and food security. The international observers were particularly impressed by the way Phoenix's influence extended beyond direct interactions. Horses that had completed their rehabilitation under his guidance often showed similar abilities to help newcomers adjust, creating a multiplier effect that enhanced the sanctuary's capacity for healing. Frank's role evolved to include advising international conservation programs. His unique perspective on the development of the Phoenix Protocol made him invaluable in helping others adapt its principles to different contexts. He emphasized the importance of maintaining connection with the wild spirit of animals while providing support for their recovery. The sanctuary's success inspired new approaches to wildlife protection worldwide. Conservation organizations began incorporating principles of trauma-informed care into their work with endangered species. This shift in perspective led to more effective rehabilitation programs and better outcomes for animals affected by human activities or natural disasters. Local support for the sanctuary's work reached new levels as the international recognition grew. The ranching community, under Mike Daniels' leadership, developed innovative programs that allowed traditional cattle operations to coexist with wild horse populations. These programs became models for sustainable land use in other regions facing similar challenges. The educational impact of the sanctuary's work continued to expand through new technologies and partnerships. Virtual reality programs developed with major tech companies allowed people worldwide to experience the sanctuary's work firsthand. These immersive experiences helped build public understanding and support for wildlife conservation efforts. As autumn deepened, the UN delegation prepared their final report on the sanctuary's work. Their findings would influence international conservation policies and funding priorities for years to come. The data they collected provided compelling evidence for the effectiveness of trauma-informed approaches to wildlife rehabilitation and the importance of respecting natural behaviors in conservation efforts. The drought-affected Mustang's progress under Phoenix's guidance became another powerful demonstration of the protocol's effectiveness. Their recovery process revealed new insights into how animals cope with climate-related trauma, information that proved valuable for conservation efforts in regions affected by environmental changes. The sanctuary's work continued to evolve, each new challenge bringing opportunities for growth and understanding. The combination of scientific research, traditional wisdom, and practical experience was creating a new paradigm for wildlife conservation that recognized the importance of emotional healing in animal welfare. Ambassador Rossi shared a final observation with Frank before departing. "What you've created here goes beyond wildlife rehabilitation," she said, watching Phoenix lead his expanded herd across the autumn landscape. "You've shown us a new way of understanding our relationship with the natural world." Frank nodded, knowing that their work was contributing to a fundamental shift in how humans approach wildlife conservation. The first snowfall of winter draped Prairie Wind Sanctuary in pristine white as an unexpected situation unfolded. A specialized transport truck pulled into the sanctuary's entrance, carrying precious cargo from the San Diego Zoo's Wildlife Research Center. Dr. Marcus Wong, the zoo's chief behavioral specialist, had arrived with an unusual request that would challenge everything they thought they knew about interspecies communication. The zoo had been struggling with a young zebra orphaned by poachers in Africa who showed severe trauma symptoms that resisted all traditional rehabilitation methods. After learning about Phoenix's extraordinary success with traumatized horses, Dr. Wong proposed an unconventional experiment. Could the copper stallion's gentle healing approach extend beyond his own species? Frank observed from the heated observation. Rumors Phoenix first encountered the zebra, named Zara by her caretakers. The initial meeting defied all expectations. Phoenix approached with unprecedented caution, seemingly recognizing that this striped equine needed something different from his usual rehabilitation techniques. His body language shifted in subtle ways, adapting to communicate with this distant cousin of the horse family. The sanctuary team watched in amazement as Phoenix began establishing a careful dialogue with Zara. Despite their different species, the fundamental language of equine communication remained intact. The copper stallion's patience and intuitive understanding appeared to transcend the species barrier, offering hope for this traumatized young zebra. Dr. Chen closely monitored both animals' vital signs during their interactions, documenting remarkable synchronization in their stress responses. As Phoenix helped Zara navigate her new environment, their physiological patterns began to align in ways that suggested deep emotional connection was possible even across species boundaries. Casey's research expanded to include comparative studies of equine subspecies communication. The interactions between Phoenix and Zara provided unprecedented opportunities to study how basic equine social behaviors translated across species lines. Her findings suggested that the fundamental principles of the Phoenix Protocol might have applications far beyond their original scope. Sarah Running Wolf brought valuable perspective to this new development. In her traditional teachings, animals of different kinds could share deep spiritual connections, particularly in times of healing. She worked with the research team to document how these ancient understandings aligned with their scientific observations of Phoenix and Zara's interactions. The documentary crew captured extraordinary footage of these unprecedented encounters. The sight of a wild Mustang gently guiding a traumatized zebra through the healing process captivated viewers worldwide. Each small breakthrough in Zara's recovery added another layer to the growing understanding of animal emotional intelligence. At Blue Pine Ranch, the educational programs evolved to incorporate this new dimension of wildlife rehabilitation. Children learned about the interconnectedness of different species and the universal language of compassion. The story of Phoenix and Zara became a powerful tool for teaching empathy and understanding across all kinds of boundaries. Tommy's Photography Club found creative inspiration in documenting the unique relationship between the copper stallion and the striped zebra. Their images captured moments of connection that transcended species differences, telling a story of healing that resonated with viewers around the world. Lisa Blackwood's adaptive riding program incorporated insights gained from observing Phoenix's work with Zara. The principles of cross-species communication enhanced her methods for helping people with disabilities connect with therapy horses. Her work demonstrated how understanding animal behavior could improve human-animal therapeutic relationships. The University of Colorado research team expanded their studies to include comparative analysis of trauma recovery patterns across different equine species. The success with Zara suggested possibilities for adapting the Phoenix Protocol to help other exotic animals affected by human activities or natural disasters. Maria Delgado faced unique challenges in managing this new aspect of the sanctuary's work. Integrating a zebra into the facility required careful consideration of both physical and social factors. Her innovative solutions to these challenges established new protocols for multi-species rehabilitation programs. International interest in the sanctuary's work reached new heights as news of Zara's progress spread. Conservation organizations working with various equine species, from Przewalski's horses to African wild asses, sought guidance in applying the Phoenix Protocol to their rehabilitation efforts. The implications for endangered species conservation were significant. Dr. Wong's presence brought new perspectives to the sanctuary's research efforts. His experience with exotic animals helped the team understand how Phoenix's methods might be adapted for different species. The collaboration between the sanctuary and the zoo opened new possibilities for wildlife rehabilitation. The success with Zara led to requests from other wildlife centers facing similar challenges. Facilities working with traumatized exotic animals began exploring how the principles of the Phoenix Protocol might be adapted to help various species. The sanctuary's influence expanded into unexpected areas of wildlife conservation. Frank's role evolved to include advising on cross-species rehabilitation programs. His unique understanding of Phoenix's methods helped others recognize the universal elements of animal emotional healing. His insights contributed to developing new approaches for helping traumatized wildlife of all kinds. The winter months brought their own challenges to this groundbreaking work. The sanctuary team created heated spaces where Phoenix and Zara could continue their interactions despite the cold. These adaptations led to new understanding about how environment affected rehabilitation processes. As Zara's recovery progressed, she began showing interest in Phoenix's herd. The Mustang's careful guidance helped her navigate these new social connections, demonstrating how cross-species bonds could facilitate broader social integration. Her progress challenged conventional wisdom about the limitations of wildlife rehabilitation. The sanctuary's professional development programs expanded to include workshops on cross-species rehabilitation techniques. Veterinarians and wildlife specialists from around the world came to learn how Phoenix's methods might be adapted for their work with various species. These sessions fostered innovation in wildlife rehabilitation practices. Throughout these developments, Phoenix continued to demonstrate extraordinary sensitivity to the needs of different animals. His ability to adjust his approach based on the specific requirements of each individual, regardless of species, revealed new dimensions of animal emotional intelligence. The zebra's presence at the sanctuary attracted attention from unexpected quarters. Evolutionary biologists became interested in studying how related species could communicate and support each other's emotional healing. Their research added new dimensions to understanding animal consciousness and social behavior. Dr. Chen's medical observations revealed fascinating patterns in how different equine species processed and recovered from trauma. The similarities and differences between Zara's and the Mustang's recovery processes provided valuable insights into the universal aspects of emotional healing in animals. The documentary team's footage of Phoenix and Zara's interactions became part of a groundbreaking series on animal intelligence and emotional capacity. Their story helped change public perception about the depth of animal consciousness and the importance of specialized rehabilitation programs. As winter deepened, the sanctuary's work with cross-species rehabilitation continued to yield surprising results. Each new interaction between Phoenix and Zara revealed previously unknown aspects of animal communication and healing. Their relationship demonstrated the profound possibilities that emerged when traditional boundaries were transcended with patience and understanding. The impact of this work extended far beyond the sanctuary's boundaries. Wildlife rehabilitation centers worldwide began reconsidering their approaches to treating traumatized animals, incorporating insights gained from Phoenix's work with Zara. The success of their cross-species connection inspired new hope for helping animals affected by human activities. Frank often reflected on how far they had come from that first morning when Phoenix appeared at his ranch. The Copper Stallion's journey from wild Mustang to healing guide for other species embodied the boundless possibilities that emerged when beings were allowed to express their true nature. As the winter stars shone over Prairie Wind Sanctuary, the story of Phoenix and Zara continued to unfold, revealing new dimensions of healing and connection. Their extraordinary relationship demonstrated that when it came to emotional healing, the boundaries between species could dissolve in the presence of genuine compassion and understanding. Spring thaw brought an unprecedented gathering to Prairie Wind Sanctuary. Representatives from 12 leading veterinary schools had assembled to witness something extraordinary. A revolutionary training program, inspired by Phoenix's remarkable journey, was about to change the way future veterinarians approached animal rehabilitation. The Copper Stallion, now a living legend in wildlife rehabilitation circles, stood calmly in the morning mist as eager students prepared to learn from his example. Dr. Amanda Foster, Dean of Veterinary Medicine at Colorado State University, had proposed integrating the Phoenix Protocol into standard veterinary education. Her vision went beyond traditional medical training to include understanding the emotional and psychological aspects of animal healing. The sanctuary had been chosen as the pilot site for this groundbreaking educational initiative. Frank watched from his customary spot as the first group of veterinary students encountered Phoenix. The Copper Stallion's presence commanded attention. Without demanding it, a subtle distinction that Frank had learned was crucial to understanding his healing approach. Each student would spend 2 weeks at the sanctuary, learning to read the nuanced language of animal emotion and behavior. The program's innovative curriculum combined hands-on experience with theoretical understanding. Students learned to recognize subtle signs of emotional distress in animals and studied the intricate dance of trust-building that Phoenix had perfected. Dr. Chen's detailed medical records provided scientific validation for the effectiveness of these gentle rehabilitation methods. Casey, now completing her own veterinary studies, took an active role in mentoring the new students. Her unique perspective as both a researcher and a witness to Phoenix's evolution helped bridge the gap between traditional veterinary medicine and innovative rehabilitation techniques. Her presentations on the neurological aspects of emotional healing in animals became a cornerstone of the program. Sarah Running Wolf's contributions added essential depth to the training. Her traditional knowledge about the spiritual aspects of healing complemented the scientific curriculum. Students learned to appreciate how ancient wisdom and modern medicine could work together to create more effective treatment approaches. The documentary team captured powerful moments of transformation as students experienced their first successful connections with traumatized animals. Many reported that their entire perspective on veterinary medicine had shifted after witnessing Phoenix's methods in action. These future veterinarians would carry these insights into practices across the country. At Blue Pine Ranch, the educational programs expanded to include special sessions for young people interested in veterinary careers. Tommy's Photography Club collaborated with the veterinary students, creating visual guides to animal body language and behavior. Their work helped make complex concepts accessible to future generations of animal caregivers. Lisa Blackwood developed new modules for her adaptive riding program that incorporated insights from the Veterinary Training Initiative. Her methods for helping people with disabilities connect with horses became part of the curriculum, demonstrating how human and animal healing could complement each other. The University of Colorado research team conducted extensive studies on the effectiveness of this new approach to veterinary education. Early results showed that students trained in the Phoenix Protocol demonstrated significantly better outcomes when working with traumatized animals. Their success rates in rehabilitation cases exceeded traditional approaches by a substantial margin. Maria Delgado's management expertise proved invaluable in coordinating the educational program with the sanctuary's ongoing rehabilitation work. Her careful scheduling ensured that learning opportunities were maximized while maintaining the peaceful environment essential for animal recovery. Her organizational model became a template for other facilities implementing similar programs. The presence of veterinary students brought new energy to the sanctuary's research initiatives. Each group contributed fresh perspectives and questions, leading to innovative approaches to wildlife rehabilitation. The combination of young enthusiasm and experienced guidance created a dynamic learning environment that benefited both humans and animals. Dr. Chen's medical oversight of the program revealed interesting patterns in how different students adapted to the gentle rehabilitation methods. Some naturally understood the subtle communication required, while others needed more time to develop these skills. These observations helped refine the teaching methodology for future groups. The success of the veterinary training program attracted attention from medical schools studying the human applications of animal-assisted therapy. Researchers noted similarities between Phoenix's trauma recovery techniques and successful approaches to human psychological healing. This unexpected connection opened new avenues for research in both veterinary and human medicine. Frank's role evolved to include mentoring students in the art of patient observation. His years of watching Phoenix work with traumatized animals had given him unique insights into the subtle signs of emotional healing. Students learned to appreciate the importance of stillness and careful attention in animal rehabilitation. Throughout the training program, Phoenix continued his work with various rehabilitation cases. Students witnessed his extraordinary ability to adapt his approach for different situations and species. His interactions with traumatized animals provided living examples of the principles they were learning. The sanctuary's professional development workshops expanded to include specialized training for practicing veterinarians interested in incorporating these methods into their existing practices. These sessions helped spread the influence of the Phoenix Protocol beyond the academic environment into working veterinary clinics. International interest in the program grew as news of its success spread. Veterinary schools from other countries began sending observers to study the curriculum, hoping to implement similar training in their own institutions. The sanctuary's approach to veterinary education was becoming a global model for innovation in animal care. Dr. Foster worked closely with the sanctuary team to document every aspect of the training program. The resulting materials would help other veterinary schools implement similar curricula. Their comprehensive approach ensured that the Phoenix Protocol's principles would influence veterinary education for generations to come. The impact of the program extended beyond traditional veterinary practice. Wildlife rehabilitation centers reported improved outcomes when employing veterinarians trained in these methods. The gentle approach to animal healing was proving particularly effective in cases involving human-caused trauma. Students in the program learned to appreciate the importance of allowing animals time to heal emotionally as well as physically. Phoenix's example showed how patience and understanding could facilitate deeper healing than traditional medical interventions alone. This holistic approach to animal care represented a significant shift in veterinary medicine. The sanctuary's research partnership with the University of Colorado expanded to include studies on the long-term effectiveness of this new approach to veterinary education. Early data suggested that veterinarians trained in these methods showed higher success rates in treating complex cases involving both physical and emotional trauma. As spring progressed, the first group of students completed their training and prepared to return to their respective schools. Their experiences at the sanctuary had profoundly influenced their understanding of animal care. Many expressed how working with Phoenix had changed their perspective on the veterinary profession. The legacy of the program would extend far beyond the sanctuary's boundaries. Each student would carry these lessons into their future practice, influencing countless animal lives through their enhanced understanding of emotional healing. The ripple effect of Phoenix's gentle wisdom would continue to spread through the veterinary profession. Frank observed these developments with quiet satisfaction, knowing that the unlikely connection he had formed with a wild Mustang would now help shape the future of animal care. The story of Phoenix had grown beyond personal healing to become a catalyst for transformation in veterinary medicine. As the season of renewal continued, Prairie Wind Sanctuary stood as a living laboratory where the next generation of veterinarians learned to combine scientific knowledge with compassionate understanding. The integration of Phoenix's methods into mainstream veterinary education ensured that his extraordinary gift for healing would benefit animals for years to come. Late spring sunshine warmed Prairie Wind Sanctuary as an innovative experiment in education took shape. A group of child psychologists and special education experts had gathered to study something remarkable. They had noticed that children with autism spectrum disorders showed extraordinary responses when observing Phoenix's interactions with recovering animals. Now they hoped to understand why his gentle approach resonated so deeply with these unique minds. Dr. Emily Nakamura, a leading researcher in autism and animal therapy, arrived with a carefully selected group of students from her specialized learning center. These children, ages 8 to 15, each experienced the world differently from their neurotypical peers. Some were nonverbal, others highly sensitive to sensory input, but all shared an uncanny ability to perceive subtle aspects of animal behavior that most people missed. Frank watched from his wheelchair as the first group of children encountered Phoenix. The copper stallion's reaction surprised everyone. He approached each child differently, somehow sensing their individual comfort levels and adapting his behavior accordingly. With highly sensitive children, he remained perfectly still, allowing them to set the pace of interaction. For those seeking sensory input, he offered gentle movement and soft sounds. Maya, a 12-year-old girl who rarely spoke, displayed an immediate connection with Phoenix's way of communicating. She began mimicking his body language, creating a wordless dialogue that brought tears to her therapist's eyes. Through Phoenix, she had found a way to express herself that transcended the need for verbal communication. Dr. Chen monitored the physiological responses of both the children and the horses during these interactions. The data revealed fascinating patterns of synchronized heart rates and reduced stress indicators when Phoenix facilitated communication between the children and other recovering animals. These findings suggested new possibilities for understanding nonverbal emotional connection. Casey's research expanded to include studying how Phoenix's rehabilitation methods could inform animal-assisted therapy programs. The success of his approach with both traumatized animals and children with special needs indicated common elements in emotional healing across species. Her work began bridging the gap between wildlife rehabilitation and therapeutic education. Sarah Runningwolf recognized profound significance in these developments. In her cultural tradition, children with unique perspectives were often considered specially attuned to the natural world. She worked with the research team to document how traditional understanding of these special connections aligned with their scientific observations. The documentary crew captured extraordinary moments of breakthrough as children who struggled with traditional communication found new ways to express themselves through interaction with the horses. Their footage revealed the universal language of emotional connection that Phoenix had helped uncover. At Blue Pine Ranch, the educational programs evolved to incorporate these new insights. Tommy's Photography Club welcomed several students from Dr. Nakamura's group, discovering that their unique perspectives enhanced the visual documentation of horse behavior. Their photographs captured subtle interactions that others might have missed. Lisa Blackwood adapted her adaptive riding program to include specialized sessions for children with autism spectrum disorders. The insights gained from observing Phoenix's approach helped her develop new methods for facilitating therapeutic connections between horses and riders with different sensory processing needs. The University of Colorado research team expanded their studies to include analysis of nonverbal communication patterns between horses and humans with different neurological profiles. Their findings suggested that Phoenix's intuitive approach to communication might offer insights into developing more effective therapeutic interventions. Maria Delgado faced new challenges in managing these specialized educational programs. She worked closely with therapists and educators to create an environment that supported both the children's needs and the sanctuary's rehabilitation work. Her innovative solutions became a model for other facilities interested in combining animal therapy with wildlife rehabilitation. Dr. Nakamura's presence brought new perspectives to the sanctuary's research efforts. Her expertise in neurodiversity helped the team understand how Phoenix's methods naturally accommodated different ways of processing and responding to the world. The collaboration between autism specialists and wildlife rehabilitators opened new possibilities for understanding emotional communication. The success with the initial group of students led to requests from other special education programs. Schools and therapy centers began exploring how the principles of the Phoenix Protocol might be adapted to help children with various developmental differences. The sanctuary's influence expanded into unexpected areas of educational therapy. Frank's role evolved to include sharing insights about nonverbal observation with educators and therapists. His years of watching Phoenix work with animals helped others recognize the subtle cues that facilitated successful communication. His perspective proved particularly valuable in developing guidelines for working with nonverbal students. Spring weather allowed for extensive outdoor sessions where children could observe and interact with the horses in natural settings. These experiences revealed how Phoenix's herd created an accepting environment that welcomed different ways of being and communicating. The horses' non-judgmental responses helped children feel safe, expressing themselves authentically. Some of the most profound breakthroughs came from unexpected moments. A young boy who struggled with overwhelming sensory experiences found peace in simply sitting near Phoenix, matching his breathing to the horse's steady rhythm. This natural form of self-regulation offered new insights into supporting sensory integration. The sanctuary's professional development programs expanded to include workshops for special education teachers and therapists. These sessions focused on understanding how Phoenix's approach to communication could inform work with students who experienced the world differently. The principles of patient, non-verbal connection proved valuable across various therapeutic settings. Throughout these developments, Phoenix continued to demonstrate extraordinary sensitivity to individual needs. His ability to adjust his approach based on each child's unique way of experiencing the world revealed new dimensions of animal emotional intelligence. His interactions helped challenge assumptions about the limitations of interspecies communication. The presence of children with different neurological profiles brought new energy to the sanctuary's healing work. Their unique perspectives often revealed aspects of animal behavior that others had overlooked. Their natural ability to notice subtle details enhanced the team's understanding of horse communication patterns. Dr. Chen's medical observations revealed fascinating correlations between the children's engagement with the horses and improvements in their overall well-being. The calming effect of Phoenix's presence seemed particularly beneficial for children who struggled with anxiety or sensory overload. The documentary team's footage of these interactions became part of a groundbreaking series on alternative approaches to special education. Their story helped change public perception about the capabilities of children with developmental differences and the potential of animal-assisted learning. As spring progressed, the impact of this innovative program continued to grow. Each interaction between Phoenix and the children revealed new possibilities for understanding different ways of experiencing and communicating with the world. Their connections demonstrated how natural environments could support diverse learning styles. The success of the program extended beyond the sanctuary's boundaries. Educational institutions worldwide began reconsidering their approaches to teaching children with special needs, incorporating insights gained from Phoenix's work. The gentle, accepting environment of the sanctuary proved particularly effective in supporting diverse learning styles. Frank often reflected on how Phoenix's sensitivity to different ways of being had emerged from his own journey of healing. The copper stallion's ability to connect with minds that process the world differently demonstrated the profound possibilities that emerged when beings were allowed to communicate in their own unique ways. As the season of growth continued, Prairie Wind Sanctuary became a living laboratory where different ways of experiencing and understanding the world were celebrated and supported. The story of Phoenix's work with children on the autism spectrum added another dimension to his legacy of healing and connection. The future implications of this work extended far beyond the immediate benefits for participating students. The insights gained from studying Phoenix's approach to communication offered new possibilities for understanding and supporting neurodiversity in all its forms. His example showed how acceptance and patience could create bridges between different ways of being in the world. Early summer brought an unexpected collaboration to Prairie Wind Sanctuary. A renowned dance company had approached the facility with an unusual proposal. They wanted to create a performance piece inspired by Phoenix's methods of nonverbal communication. The project would combine classical ballet with natural horse movement, exploring the universal language of physical expression that transcended species boundaries. Marina Petrova, principal choreographer of the contemporary ballet movement, arrived with her lead dancers to study the copper stallion's distinctive way of moving and interacting. She was particularly intrigued by how Phoenix used subtle shifts in posture and rhythm to convey complex emotional messages to both horses and humans. Frank observed from his customary spot as the dancers first encountered Phoenix. The copper stallion's reaction to these graceful humans was fascinating. He seemed to recognize something familiar in their fluid movements, responding with his own carefully measured steps and gestures. A natural choreography began to emerge from their interactions. Elena, the company's prima ballerina, showed an immediate affinity for Phoenix's movement language. She began incorporating elements of equine motion into her dance vocabulary, creating a hybrid form that captured the essence of both species' expressive abilities. Her interpretations of Phoenix's healing interactions brought a new dimension to understanding his work. Dr. Chen monitored the physiological responses of both dancers and horses during these creative sessions. The data revealed intriguing patterns of synchronized movement and breath that suggested deep levels of nonverbal communication. These findings opened new avenues for understanding how physical harmony could facilitate emotional connection. Casey's research expanded to include studying the parallels between artistic expression and animal communication. The dancer's ability to interpret and embody Phoenix's methods offered fresh insights into the universal aspects of physical language. Her work began bridging the gap between performing arts and wildlife rehabilitation. Sarah Runningwolf recognized deep significance in this artistic interpretation of horse behavior. In her cultural tradition, dance was often used to connect with animal spirits and natural forces. She worked with the choreographers to incorporate traditional understanding of movement as a spiritual language into their creative process. The documentary crew captured extraordinary moments as the dancers developed their interpretation of Phoenix's work. Their footage revealed how artistic expression could illuminate aspects of animal behavior that were difficult to convey through scientific observation alone. The resulting sequences brought new understanding to the sanctuary's mission. At Blue Bean Ranch, the educational programs evolved to include movement workshops where children learned to observe and interpret animal body language through dance. Tommy's Photography Club collaborated with the dancers, creating stunning visual records of how human and equine movement could blend into a unified language of expression. Lisa Blackwood integrated elements of the dance project into her adaptive riding program. The emphasis on fluid movement and natural rhythm helped riders develop stronger connections with their horses. The artistic approach to physical communication enhanced the therapeutic benefits of her work. The University of Colorado research team expanded their studies to include analysis of movement patterns in both humans and horses. Their findings suggested that conscious attention to physical harmony could enhance interspecies communication. This research opened new possibilities for understanding how bodies could speak across species boundaries. Maria Delgado managed the integration of artistic activities with the sanctuary's regular operations. She created schedules that allowed the dancers to observe and interact with the horses while maintaining the peaceful environment essential for rehabilitation work. Her careful planning ensured that both artistic and therapeutic goals were met. Marina Petrova's presence brought new perspectives to the sanctuary's understanding of nonverbal communication. Her expertise in translating emotional states into physical expression helped others recognize the sophisticated language of movement that Phoenix had developed. The collaboration between artists and animal behaviorists yielded unexpected insights. The success of the dance project attracted attention from other performing arts organizations. Theater companies, musicians, and visual artists began exploring how Phoenix's approach to communication could inform their work. The sanctuary's influence expanded into unexpected areas of artistic expression. Frank's role evolved to include sharing insights about movement and intention with the artists. His years of observing Phoenix's subtle communication methods helped the dancers understand the deeper meanings behind each gesture and stance. His perspective proved valuable in developing authentic interpretations of equine expression. The summer weather allowed for outdoor rehearsals where dancers could work directly with the horses in natural settings. These sessions revealed how Phoenix's herd created complex choreographies of their own, with each member contributing to a fluid ensemble of movement and response. The artists drew inspiration from these natural performances. Some of the most powerful moments emerged spontaneously. A young dancer recovering from injury found healing through mirroring Phoenix's gentle, deliberate movements. This physical dialogue offered new insights into how movement could facilitate emotional and physical recovery. The sanctuary's professional development programs expanded to include workshops exploring the role of artistic expression in animal rehabilitation. These sessions helped caregivers understand how creative approaches to movement could enhance their work with traumatized animals. The principles of artistic interpretation brought new depth to rehabilitation techniques. Throughout these developments, Phoenix continued to demonstrate extraordinary sensitivity to the artistic process. His ability to engage with the dancers while maintaining his role as a healer revealed new dimensions of his emotional intelligence. His interactions inspired conversations about the relationship between art and healing. The presence of artists brought new energy to the sanctuary's therapeutic work. Their creative interpretations of animal behavior offered fresh perspectives on rehabilitation methods. Their ability to translate Phoenix's work into human movement enhanced understanding of his healing approach. Dr. Chen's medical observations revealed interesting correlations between artistic expression and therapeutic outcomes. The integration of creative movement into rehabilitation programs seemed to accelerate emotional healing in both humans and animals. These findings suggested new possibilities for trauma recovery. The documentary team's footage of the dance project became part of a groundbreaking exploration of interspecies communication through art. Their work helped change public perception about the sophistication of animal expression and the potential of creative approaches to wildlife rehabilitation. As summer deepened, the impact of this artistic collaboration continued to grow. Each interaction between Phoenix and the dancers revealed new possibilities for understanding and expressing the language of movement that connected all living beings. Their work demonstrated how art could bridge the gap between species. The success of the program extended beyond the sanctuary's boundaries. Performing arts organizations worldwide began exploring how principles of animal communication could inform their creative processes. The gentle, expressive environment of the sanctuary proved particularly conducive to artistic innovation. Frank often reflected on how Phoenix's sensitivity to movement and gesture had emerged from his own journey of healing. The Copper Stallion's ability to inspire artistic interpretation demonstrated the profound possibilities that emerged when beings were allowed to communicate through natural forms of expression. As the season of creativity continued, Prairie Wind Sanctuary became a living laboratory where art and animal behavior intersected in unexpected ways. The story of Phoenix's influence on the performing arts added another dimension to his legacy of healing and connection. The future implications of this work extended far beyond the immediate artistic outcomes. The insights gained from studying Phoenix's movement language offered new possibilities for understanding and facilitating communication between all living beings. His example showed how creative expression could create bridges between different forms of consciousness. The golden light of late summer filled Prairie Wind Sanctuary with a special kind of magic as preparations began for a momentous celebration. 5 years had passed since that first extraordinary morning when Phoenix approached Frank's wheelchair, and the sanctuary had organized a special gathering to honor their remarkable journey. Representatives from wildlife organizations, veterinary, schools, therapeutic programs, and art institutions came together to witness how one unexpected connection had transformed countless lives. The Copper Stallion stood majestically in the morning mist, his coat gleaming with the same vibrant energy that had first caught Frank's attention years ago. Despite the passing seasons, Phoenix maintained the powerful presence that made him such an effective healer. Now, surrounded by the dozens of horses he had helped rehabilitate, he embodied the profound impact that one act of trust could have. Dr. Eleanor Wright from the Smithsonian Institution presented her comprehensive study of Phoenix's influence on wildlife rehabilitation techniques. The data collected over the years revealed unprecedented success rates in trauma recovery among animals treated using the Phoenix Protocol. Her presentation included testimonials from sanctuaries worldwide that had adopted these gentle methods. Frank watched from his familiar observation point as various speakers shared stories of transformation and healing. Each account added another layer to the remarkable legacy that had grown from that first tentative connection. The elderly man's eyes grew misty as he remembered the uncertain morning when a wild Mustang chose to approach his wheelchair. The day's events included demonstrations of the various programs that had evolved from Phoenix's work. The veterinary. Students showed how they incorporated his methods into their practice, while the dance company performed their interpretation of his healing approach. Children from the special education program demonstrated their unique ways of connecting with the horses. Gacy, now a respected authority in veterinary rehabilitation, presented her research on the neurological aspects of animal trauma recovery. Her work had helped establish scientific validation for the gentle methods that Phoenix had intuitively developed. The success of her studies had influenced veterinary education programs across the globe. Sarah Runningwolf led a ceremony honoring the spiritual dimension of Phoenix's work. Her traditional prayers and rituals acknowledged the deep wisdom that had guided this extraordinary journey of healing. The gathering fell silent as she performed a blessing for the continued success of the sanctuary's mission. The documentary team premiered a special retrospective of their years, recording Phoenix's work. The footage captured the evolution of his methods and the growing impact of his approach to rehabilitation. Viewers watched in amazement as the story unfolded, showing how one horse's compassion had sparked a revolution in animal care. At Blue Pine Ranch, the celebration continued with an open house showcasing the educational programs that had grown from Frank's initial experience. Tommy's photography exhibition displayed powerful images documenting the sanctuary's journey, while Lisa Blackwood's adaptive riding demonstrations showed how Phoenix's methods had enhanced therapeutic programs. Maria Delgado shared her experiences, managing the sanctuary's growth from a small rehabilitation facility to an internationally recognized center for innovation in animal care. Her organizational model had been adopted by similar facilities worldwide, creating a network of sanctuaries dedicated to gentle rehabilitation methods. The University of Colorado research team presented their longitudinal studies on the effectiveness of the Phoenix Protocol. Their data showed how this approach had revolutionized understanding of animal emotional intelligence and trauma recovery. The scientific validation of these methods had opened new avenues for wildlife conservation. Dr. Chen's medical observations over the years had created a comprehensive database of physical and emotional healing patterns in traumatized animals. Her work provided crucial evidence for the connection between emotional well-being and physical recovery, influencing veterinary practices worldwide. Throughout the celebration, Phoenix continued his work with the sanctuary's current residents. Even as speakers shared stories of his past achievements, he demonstrated the gentle methods that had made him legendary. His consistent dedication to helping other animals showed that his healing mission remained as strong as ever. The artistic collaborations inspired by Phoenix's work were featured in a special performance, combining dance, music, and natural horse movement. The piece captured the essence of his rehabilitation method, showing how genuine connection could transcend the boundaries between species. Frank's role as the sanctuary's elder statesman had evolved into that of a wisdom keeper, sharing the deep understanding he had gained through years of observing Phoenix's work. His perspective helped others recognize the profound simplicity at the heart of successful animal rehabilitation. The sanctuary's professional development programs had grown into a global network of practitioners trained in gentle rehabilitation methods. Representatives from these programs shared stories of how Phoenix's approach had transformed their work with traumatized animals around the world. The impact of the Phoenix Protocol extended far beyond traditional wildlife rehabilitation. Therapeutic programs, educational institutions, and conservation organizations had all found valuable applications for these methods. The celebration included presentations from various fields that had been influenced by this approach. As evening approached, the gathering moved to a special sunset ceremony. The sanctuary's resident horses, led by Phoenix, moved freely among the attendees, demonstrating the natural harmony that had become the hallmark of this unique facility. The moment captured the essence of what made the sanctuary's work so special. Frank addressed the gathering, sharing his personal journey from isolation to purpose. His words touched hearts as he described how an unexpected encounter with a wild Mustang had opened new possibilities not just for him, but for countless others who had found healing through the sanctuary's work. The celebration concluded with a candlelight vigil honoring all the animals and humans who had found healing through the sanctuary's programs. The quiet ceremony reflected the peaceful spirit that Phoenix had brought to his work with traumatized beings of all kinds. As stars began to appear in the darkening sky, the legacy of Phoenix's work shone clearly. What had begun as a simple connection between a wild Mustang and an elderly man in a wheelchair had grown into a movement that transformed approaches to animal care worldwide. The future of Prairie Wind Sanctuary seemed bright as new generations of caregivers, researchers, and healers carried forward the gentle methods that Phoenix had pioneered. His influence would continue to shape approaches to wildlife rehabilitation for years to come. The celebration served as both a milestone and a beginning, marking 5 years of extraordinary achievement while pointing toward future possibilities. The story of Phoenix and Frank had become a testament to the power of trust, patience, and the healing connection that could form between beings who chose to reach across the boundaries that separated them. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.